Let's explore this a little further now with our guest, Arnold Ma. He was inspired to begin a campaign, #EveryAsianVoice, on the back of rising racist violence the community faced in the wake of COVID's arrival in Europe, and he's got something of an international footprint with bases in London, Shanghai and New York. Arnold, good to see you. Welcome. Is racism towards specifically the Asian community any different to racism to any other community? Racism is racism, isn't it?
Yeah, Jamie, thank you for having me. I agree with you. I think there's a distinct, lack of representation for all minorities. And I agree that racism is racism. I guess the situation might be slightly different.
Do you think, and in your experience, has the pandemic made this worse?
Yeah, I think it has. As mentioned earlier, I think a lot of this narrative came from the back of coronavirus by state leaders like Trump and Nigel Farage as well, to almost blame China for the coronavirus in mainstream media.
I wonder if any of this is new, or do we simply know much more about it because of awareness, because of reporting and social media?
Yeah, I think the systemic racism isn't new. So I just want to quickly explain that as an Asian, we're taught from a very young age, right, to kind of like stay to ourselves, to stay out of trouble, focus on work and academia. This is something that's culturally quite prevalent in the Chinese and Asian society in general. So we kind of just focus on our professions, we focus on academia, we kind of almost learn to ignore the hate and racism, and we suppress our own voices almost. And this mixed in with the recent narrative around coronavirus, and I guess also around the lack of representation in mainstream media, entertainment, politics, professions. All of these things creates a lack of voice, and the lack of voice creates a lack of awareness, and this perpetuates almost kind of more hate crimes, microaggressions, and it just builds up. And I think the recent events, accumulation of what's been happening over the past few decades of the systemic racism that happens, not just in America, but in a lot of Western countries.
I guess one of the key problems here is unreported racism, whether you're sitting in Europe or the United States or anywhere else, come to that matter, that people do not report it. They feel there's no point in reporting it. And governments and police forces will say, well, we don't really know how big the problem is because people don't report it. You end up in this vicious circle, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. I just want to encourage everyone to report, and I want to give an example as well. I think all microaggressions need to be reported, and sometimes most of the people who are most vulnerable, a lot of the elderly Asians in our community, and they sometimes struggle to report. Because maybe they have language barriers, they don't know how the system works. So it's really important that we as a society also create the facility for people who are most vulnerable and not able to report so readily to do that as well. I mean, even my girlfriend recently, a couple of months ago, she was walking behind a couple of young women, and they said coronavirus is walking behind us. And, you know, this kind of microaggression, I think this all needs to be accounted for and reported, because the more we speak up, the more voices we have, the more awareness there is. And that's the start of combating the problem.
OK, speaking up is one thing to fix. What else do you do to try to fix this around the world?
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. I think it's really important for us to rally everyone around us to fight for something rather than fight against something, right? So we want to be mobilizing, inspiring, providing the platform for professionals, for entertainers, for every Asian in the industry to speak up about their successes, about what they're doing to contribute to the society. And this is the foundation of every Asian voice, right? It's not just about reacting to what's happening recently. It's a long-term plan to create a platform for people to speak up and integrate, inspire, educate. We want to come from a place of positivity, because we believe that only then we can change the world to be a better place where everyone feels safe to walk on the street, everyone's integrated and happy.
Arnold, good to see you. Thank you very much for your time. Arnold Ma there in London.